The academy floated above a shattered moon, suspended in orbit by engines older than most of the students who walked its corridors. Its metal spine creaked against the gravitational tides, and the lights flickered with the rhythm of 100 storms. Every cadet knew the rules: obedience first, questions never. Discipline was law, and law was delivered by those who wore masks. Masks that hid anger, masks that hid cruelty, masks that hid the truth no one dared speak aloud. She had joined the academy with hope, not defiance. She had trained for years, honing strength and reflexes, learning languages of alien species, studying strategies that had toppled empires. But she had a fire inside that could not be extinguished by drills or humiliation. A fire that whispered, every time injustice came near, that standing down was not survival, it was surrender. The instructor was infamous. Masked, unyielding, and brutal. His voice, mechanical through filtered modulation, carried through the training hall like a whip. Commands were not suggestions. They were absolutes. And when a cadet faltered, punishment was swift, meticulous, and unforgettable. It was during a strategy simulation that it happened. The room had been converted into a maze of shifting holographic walls, representing an enemy stronghold. She had questioned the logic of the simulation, a subtle critique, careful but visible. A cadet behind her flinched, sensing the danger. But she did not retract. The instructor's masked gaze turned to her. The air thickened. Silence fell like a blade. He approached, each step precise, echoing through the hall. Cadets shrank back instinctively, some staring at the floor, some gripping weapons, all knowing what was coming. Then the slap, a sharp, mechanical sound that cut across the simulation's hum. She stumbled, the taste of iron in her mouth, the world tilting for a heartbeat, and in that heartbeat, something within her snapped. Not fear. Not anger. Clarity. Every reflex honed over years, the drills, the nights spent alone in simulation pods, the endless repetitions of combat, guided her motion. Her hand moved faster than thought. Before the instructor could blink, before the cadets could react, her fingers had found the edge of his mask and cracked it with a precision strike. The mask shattered, fragments of alloy and circuitry spinning like sparks in zero gravity. The instructor's face was revealed for the first time, scarred, pale, human beneath the machinery. Shock froze the hall. Cadets froze. Silence stretched, unbroken, oppressive, awaiting judgment. She stood tall, chest heaving, but unbroken. Her eyes burned not with hate, but with defiance, the kind that had toppled tyrants, breached impenetrable defenses, and survived worlds that refused to let humans live. The instructor's voice came, stripped of modulation. Rough and unsteady. He expected fear. He expected groveling. He expected submission. He found none. A low, deliberate calm filled the room as she stepped closer. Each cadet could feel it, the undeniable certainty of someone who knew she was right, and knew she would not allow injustice to persist. And then, with a strength that seemed to ripple through the very walls, she disarmed him, literally and symbolically. Every cadet saw the lesson unfold, more powerful than any rule could dictate. Strength was not just muscle or reflex. It was courage. It was moral clarity. It was the refusal to be cowed by fear, by hierarchy, by tradition that had long outlived its purpose. The instructor stumbled back. Mask in pieces, eyes meeting hers. In that gaze, every cadet understood something unspoken. Humanity does not submit quietly. Humanity does not wait for permission. Humanity answers injustice with action, thought, and unwavering resolve. The hall remained still for long moments, the weight of what had happened settling like dust over the cadets' hearts. Then, slowly, one by one, they began to straighten, to breathe, to remember why they had joined, not to obey blindly, but to master themselves and shape the galaxy on their terms. She turned away, walking through the shattered simulation, leaving fragments of the instructor's mask behind like evidence of truth reclaimed. The cadets followed. Not out of fear, but out of choice, inspired by the defiance they had witnessed. the instructor would never forget. The cadets would never forget. And across the academy, a lesson was written more indelibly than any rule etched into steel: to challenge oppression is to honor life itself. And so, the stars learned that no mask could hide the courage of a human spirit. The aftermath of the shattered mask reverberated through the academy long after the echoes of metal had faded. Cadets moved cautiously now, not out of fear of punishment, but with a new awareness. Hierarchy could bend. Authority could falter. Courage could redefine every rule. She walked through the training hall. Every step deliberate, every breath steady, her heart still racing but unbowed. Around her, the cadets whispered in hushed tones, exchanging glances that spoke of admiration, awe, and newfound resolve. For the first time, they realized that survival in this academy required more than obedience. It required judgment, instinct, and the audacity to act when the rules were wrong. The instructor remained on the ground, broken mask beside him, his breathing heavy, his pride fractured more than his armor. His eyes, unshielded now, scanned the cadets, searching for fear, for defiance, for submission. There was none. Every gaze that met his was steady, measured, unafraid. And for the first time in decades, he felt the weight of human resolve pressed against him. In the simulation rooms beyond, holographic enemies flickered, oblivious to the revolution that had just unfolded. Cadets resumed their exercises, but with a different mindset, learning not only precision and skill but discernment, judgment, and courage under pressure. The academy itself seemed to shift, the walls and machinery holding a subtle new energy, a resonance that had nothing to do with the instructors and everything to do with human spirit. She paused before a shattered console, fingertips brushing over scorched metal and fractured circuitry. It had been a moment of pure instinct, lightning fast, yet deliberate. Every cadet who saw it felt it. The line between submission and defiance was thinner than they had ever realized, and crossing it required mastery over fear. One of the younger cadets approached her, eyes wide, voice trembling. She did not speak a word. Instead, she offered a nod, simple, direct, and full of unspoken encouragement. Courage, she communicated, is contagious. Integrity cannot be masked. Justice demands action. The instructor finally rose, slowly, deliberately, his face exposed, his expression unreadable. There was no applause, no acknowledgement from him, yet the lesson had been learned. Every cadet had seen it, internalized it, and would carry it forward, not because it had been taught, but because it had been demonstrated in an instant of unflinching human defiance. And as the academy's lights flickered over the scarred floors, a quiet truth settled across the hall: bravery is not obedience. Strength is not silence. And sometimes, a single act can remake an entire institution. In the distance, the simulations continued to hum, and the academy itself seemed to pulse with the echo of human resolve, a quiet reminder that no mask, no matter how imposing, could contain the fire of a human spirit. The days that followed were quieter, but the tension in the academy had shifted, like gravity subtly tilting beneath their feet. Cadets moved with a new purpose, not from fear of reprimand but from a sharpened awareness. Survival demanded judgment, not blind obedience. Every corridor, every training room, every flickering light seemed charged with possibility. She trained as she always had, but now every movement carried weight beyond technique. Each strike, each parry, each tactical decision became a message. Defiance was not recklessness. It was calculation, discipline, and courage fused together. Cadets watched, learning not only from drills but from the energy she radiated, a quiet insistence that the rules of power could be challenged without chaos consuming order. The instructor kept his distance, his presence less domineering but more watchful. He observed every simulation, every engagement, measuring not just skill but intent. The mask lay in fragments on a maintenance bench, a stark reminder of authority questioned, and of how quickly control could shift when met with clarity and resolve. In the training yard, a team exercise brought the academy to life. Holographic adversaries flickered across the floor, walls, and ceilings, designed to push cadets to their limits. She led her squad with precision, guiding their movements, pointing out flaws, suggesting improvisations. The cadets executed with a confidence previously absent, adapting to shifting conditions with instinct sharpened by observation. Every decision reflected not obedience, but understanding, a mastery of the principles behind the rules, rather than their blind application. The younger cadets began to emulate her. A subtle defiance emerged, a question asked in strategy discussions, a suggestion offered during combat drills, a risk taken when prudence alone would have been safer. None were brash. None were arrogant. Each act was deliberate, informed, and courageous, and through it all, the academy itself seemed to breathe differently. The walls, the lights, the machinery carried the residue of a single act of human resolve, a reminder that authority was not absolute and that courage could ripple outward, transforming the people it touched. In the quiet moments, when simulations paused and footsteps echoed softly, she would pause and look around, feeling the shift she had sparked. It was subtle, invisible to outsiders, but undeniable. A single act of defiance had rewritten expectations. Humanity, even in microcosm, had asserted itself, and the academy would never be the same. And somewhere in the depths of the hall, a cadet whispered, almost unconsciously, "Strength is not silence, and courage is not obedience." Weeks passed, and the academy settled into a new rhythm, one still disciplined, still exacting, but alive with a quiet tension that spoke of possibility. Cadets moved with sharper focus, their decisions tempered by judgment as much as training. They no longer merely followed orders, they considered consequences, weighed risks, and took ownership of their actions. Simulations grew more complex. Holographic adversaries adapted, walls shifted unpredictably, and energy fields pulsed erratically. She thrived in this chaos, moving fluidly, teaching through example rather than instruction. Each maneuver, each tactical choice, was a lesson in adaptability, in courage, in moral clarity. Cadets mirrored her movements, learning not only the mechanics of combat but the philosophy behind it, that intelligence, bravery, and resolve were inseparable in the crucible of true challenge. The instructor observed from a distance, his unmasked expression unreadable. He tested, prodded, and measured, yet he no longer struck with cruelty. His methods had evolved. Constrained by the knowledge that human resolve could not be broken by intimidation alone. Authority had become negotiation, guidance, and the occasional challenge met with resistance, and the hall resonated with this subtle, powerful shift. Outside the training halls, cadets began to engage each other differently. Peer critiques replaced whispered fears. Collaboration replaced silent compliance. A question asked in strategy discussions was no longer a sign of weakness but a spark of initiative. Every cadet felt it, a single act of defiance could ripple outward, altering the dynamics of even the most rigid institution. She found moments to reflect in the quiet corners of the academy. Alone, she considered the balance between obedience and morality, between survival and righteousness. The broken mask remained a silent reminder of the day everything changed, a relic of authority shattered not by strength alone, but by decisiveness and the refusal to bow to injustice. One evening, the academy lights dimmed, the hum of the engines softened, and cadets gathered in small clusters, discussing strategies, tactics, and ethical decisions. The air was charged with intent. Humanity had proven that courage was contagious, that integrity could override fear, and that even the most impenetrable hierarchy could be reshaped when met with clarity and action. And in that still, almost sacred moment, it became clear to all who watched her, the academy no longer ruled them. They had claimed it, not with rebellion, but with the unyielding truth of human spirit. And somewhere, in the quiet pulse of the orbital station, a thought lingered like a comet's trail. Courage cannot be masked. Months passed, and the academy was no longer the same. The cadets carried themselves differently, not with arrogance, but with a quiet confidence that came from understanding their own power. Every corridor, every simulation chamber, every echoing hall now vibrated with the lessons learned, not from fear, but from witnessing courage in action. She moved through the academy with purpose. Her presence a constant reminder that mastery was more than skill, it was judgment, restraint, and the willingness to act when others hesitated. Younger cadets approached her hesitantly at first, seeking guidance, But soon they mirrored her decisiveness, learning that boldness tempered with thought could achieve what fear alone never would. The instructor no longer loomed as a figure of terror. His authority was intact, but it carried a different weight, earned through observation, tempered by restraint, and shadowed by the memory of the mask shattered in an instant of human clarity. He tested cadets more subtly now, posing dilemmas and ethical puzzles rather than striking with indiscriminate force. Each question was a chance for them to demonstrate reasoning, courage, and moral judgment. In the training yard, simulations grew more unpredictable. Holographic adversaries adapted faster, walls shifted unexpectedly, and energy pulses scrambled conventional tactics. Cadets responded not with rote patterns, but with improvisation, anticipating change and acting decisively. She led by example, her movements precise, her decisions deliberate, her presence steady. Every action taught not obedience, but comprehension, understanding the principles behind the rules and choosing when to bend them for a greater purpose. Evenings were quieter, but charged with energy. Small groups of cadets gathered to discuss tactics, ethics, and philosophy. The academy's rigid hierarchy had softened, replaced with collaboration and mutual respect. Courage was no longer a rare act, it had become a language spoken fluently among them, a shared understanding that the right choice was often the hardest, and throughout it all, the shattered mask remained in the central hall, a silent monument. Cadets passed it reverently, a reminder that no armor, no authority, no tradition could suppress the fire of a determined human spirit. In every step, in every glance, in every calculated move, the academy bore witness to a simple truth: humanity did not bend. Humanity did not falter. Humanity redefined the rules themselves. And somewhere in the quiet hum of the orbital station, the lesson echoed, clear and indelible: courage is the inheritance of those who refuse to bow. Years later, the academy had transformed entirely, yet the memory of that single moment, the shattered mask, the defiance that had reshaped everything, still pulsed through its halls. Cadets now trained not only for skill or survival but for judgment, integrity, and the courage to act when rules faltered. Every simulation, every lesson, every tactical exercise carried that unspoken lesson: authority was not absolute, and bravery could rewrite even the most rigid system. She walked among the new cadets, now instructors themselves, guiding with patience and precision. Her presence was quiet but commanding, a living proof that courage tempered with wisdom could outshine fear. Younger students looked to her not just for instruction, but for understanding, learning that power without moral clarity was meaningless, and that true mastery required both. The instructor, older now, still taught, but differently. His methods were firm yet measured, his lessons less about dominance and more about discernment. He occasionally glanced at the fragments of his old mask, preserved in a display case in the central hall, a reminder that even the most imposing authority could be questioned, confronted, and redefined by courage and clarity. In the training yards, cadets executed complex simulations with skill and creativity. Holographic adversaries shifted unpredictably, but the students responded with initiative, coordination, and decisive action. Lessons in strategy, morality, and improvisation intertwined seamlessly, reflecting a philosophy she had instilled: that humans act not just with strength, but with thought, heart, and unwavering resolve. Quiet moments still existed, when the hum of engines softened, when holographic displays dimmed, when cadets paused in reflection. In these moments, the true depth of their growth was visible. They understood that courage was not only in combat but in questioning the status quo, in protecting the vulnerable, in acting when others would hesitate. And at the center of it all, she stood once more before the display of the broken mask, tracing the fractured edges with a finger. It had been more than a single act of defiance, it had been a catalyst, a spark that ignited generations of cadets to think, to challenge, to act. The academy, once a place of strict obedience, had become a crucible for heroes, shaped by the enduring fire of humanity. And in the stillness of that moment, as cadets trained and the station hummed softly above a distant world, one truth remained immutable: no mask, no rule, no fear could contain the courage of a human heart. And so, the academy learned that defiance could be the greatest lesson of all.